Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic: how would you feel if the only thing we knew about presidential candidates was their stance on issues, no information on party, name, gender, race, or religious beliefs, or lack thereof? Would it be based on their actual stance, or what they claim is their stance? How do you verify which is which? Voting history. You should look up the philosophical thought experiment called the Veil of Ignorance. It poses a similar question: you have to look at all political, economic, and social ideas without knowing what your socio-economic position is. Pasting the reply from u/Ukathamagudwoma to give a more accurate description of the experiment, popularly attributed to American philosopher John Rawls. You have to look at all that and then design a society that you would want to live in. But the catch is, you don't know what your position will be. You might be at the bottom, you might be at the top. The idea is that you'll try to make the society as equitable as possible. Kind of like the kid who cuts the cake doesn't get to pick his slice. An example of this in fiction is from the Doctor Who 50th Anniversary Special Day of the Doctor, in which two negotiators have their memories wiped. The theory being that they will negotiate a treaty that is fair to all parties, as each negotiator doesn't know which party they belong to. A beautiful example of political theory. I don't think it would work. It's very easy for a politician to take a verbal stance on an issue. It's different to see their actual history and actions. Politicians would just sound as vague and non-committal as possible, which they usually already do, and we wouldn't be able to hold them accountable if they were being dishonest about their actual platforms and beliefs. It would just cause more problems, if anything. I ran for municipal office a couple years ago, lost in a nail-biter. While running, a major political figure in town, former mayor and retired federal cabinet minister, invited me for coffee. This guy is as straight up, honest, and principled as they come. He liked me, my campaign, and wanted to offer some advice. The main takeaway he emphasized in our chat was this: don't make promises or guarantees. Don't say you are going to do anything. Promise nothing but good representation. His reason: so many things are beyond the control of a single elected official. Tell people what you believe and how you will represent them. If you offer promises, you're setting them up for disappointment and yourself up for failure. My dad was a councillor in a town of 1,000 people and later a county of 4,000 when it was amalgamated. He held office from 1980 to 2010 without ever losing. His secret: he told people the truth, admitted when he was wrong, and did his best. In his first year in office he started pushing for a new community center, and it was finally built in his last year in office. He didn't promise the 1980 voters a new center, only that he would try to make it happen, and 30 years later, they got it. It should be like the blind auditions on The Voice. The choice: who's gonna run this bitch? They'd lie even more, to get elected, than they do now. Bloomberg, a 33 years old 6'4", 240 pounds blonde guy with blue eyes, six-packs and mixed parents, would never do such a thing. Bloomberg creeps me the fuck out. I don't want Trump, but I also don't want Bloomberg. God, this is such a Reddit post. I seriously wonder how someone could read the title and think, yes, this is a great idea and would totally work out just fine. Maybe they are a 12-year-old kid with a set of policies their teacher wrote out for them who thinks they stand a chance. Yeah, I can't believe anyone would think that's actually a good idea. It's one thing to agree with a person's policy, but if that person turned out to be a rapist or a murderer, which would be excluded from this, then there would definitely a problem. Policy is one thing, being able to judge one on their previous actions and behaviors is another. If you were offered $1 billion to not use Reddit for a day, would you take it? Honestly, I'd do it for $10, anything to motivate me off this neurotic site. How would you feel if? What if you had to pass an IQ test in order to vote? I thought we'd all agreed to ban these kinds of posts. The kind of question that can only be hatched from the brain of an individual who thinks he acts exclusively on logic, reason, and facts, while everyone else is all about identity politics and emotion. If only I could force everyone to not see contextual details that are important to them, then I know they'd vote for my favorite candidate. The best bullshitter wins, not that that changes much, but without anything to hold them accountable to their statements and commitments, it's just a mess. This is how I feel about debates. I, for one, would rather see long-form interviews from the party candidates. Seems that would be more informing. There are hour-long town halls going on right now with the candidates. One at a time. Bernie Sanders is live on CNN with Anderson Cooper as I type this. There have been a lot of town halls and candidate forums, many nationally televised. The vast majority of ones not televised are available online. How would you feel if our /Askreddit banned leading questions that begin with how would you feel? I could have sworn they did. So stupid that these questions still get onto the front page. They probably lifted the ban after the mods found out that it gets on the front page. How would you feel if a naked man broke into your home? Immediately followed by 28 comment long chain that inevitably devolves back into US left vs right politics. Interesting in theory, but context in the form of values or motivations matters. For a very extreme example, you can go to our /political compass memes/ and see that two people in a vacuum oppose chattel slavery from Africa, but one of them opposes it because the institution itself is wrong, lib-left, and the other because they don't want black people in America, alt-right. If you are curious, you could try one of the online tests that does essentially what you're asking. I usually do ISADUITH. The problem with ISADUITH is it completely throws out any nuance at all. Very broad and vague policy questions are yes/no. You have to expand the answer options for each question for a more accurate reading. And another huge problem is it takes conservatives at their word when they say they value fiscal responsibility, low taxes, and avoiding deficits. Like, who doesn't value that? That's how you get all these people who say idiotic shit like I like the DEMs in social policies but fiscally I'm more of a conservative. Platforms like I side with and Political Compass perpetuates right-wing talking points and leads people to think they, as voters, more right-wing than they actually are. Plus it ignores the glaring and obvious truth that conservatives haven't cared about fiscal responsibility when in power for decades. I believe that was a joke on Political Compass memes. I mean, for one, it is plausible. But also the ability to be social is important for a leader. Yes, this. A president isn't just a person whose views we support, it's also their political talent. They have to interact with other leaders, stay calm under pressure, give good speeches, etc. Exactly, it bothers me when people act like policies are the only thing that matters when it comes to these things. Like, are you really gonna tell me the only important differences between Trump and Obama are their differing opinions on taxation, gun control, and a couple other policies, and their differences in personality and methods of discourse are completely irrelevant? That would be useless. Just words on a page. Everyone would jockey to write the most pandering words on a page. You need to know who those words are coming from. Their background. You need to see how genuine they are when they make those promises out loud. LMAO at all the supportive comments. It's really one of the dumbest idea I've ever read about elections. You realize a person can lie about their stance, right? Okay, so now you have 400 candidates who all say their stance is whatever is highest polling, or a slight variation thereof. Some might be true believers in those reforms, but most just take those positions cynically to get elected. How can you tell who's who? The more bizarre thing to me is that the president's stances are among the least important things to being president. Turns out that's all anyone cares about, but what he thinks about gun control or abortion doesn't even matter. His ability to facilitate government, lead the legislative branch to tackle and reach agreements / compromises to enact necessary policy on tough issues, represent America on a global stage, articulate issues to foreign leaders as well as the American people, and uphold the Constitution and rule of law are all monumentally more important than whether he agrees with me on deficit spending. All those issues are how you're supposed to elect congressmen and senators. They're the ones who make the laws, not the president. You think Obamacare would have happened with a Republican legislature? No. If we moved to what Op proposes, we might elect the most reasonable, thoughtful, intelligent person ever who happens to be a 5'2" beard with severe social anxiety who can't be taken seriously as a professional, let alone the leader of a nation. I think we need to know more than just the policies. I want to know if they are just saying things for votes or if there's proof of them actually trying to do what they say. It's all very well saying war is bad, but are you actually protesting against wars, or just saying it's bad, as an example? I'd be happy if the early primaries simply involved a basic civics contests and the person who scores the lowest is automatically disqualified from running. How would you handle the contest, and how would you ensure that it's not biased or gamed? I know this might sound crazy, because I see what you're saying and why, but I think that would actually be a terrible idea. First, you're assuming that the test can't/won't be rigged or manipulated in some way, and there's sufficient evidence that our electoral processes aren't as secure as we thought. Second, barring out-and-out fraud, there's still opportunity for political manipulation in the test's formulation or administration. Again, this requires good faith participation from all actors, which you plausibly won't have. Next, let's say the test isn't out-and-out rigged, and is also fairly conceived and administered. What constitutes a pass? Can you miss any questions? Are the test results made public? Even if you officially pass, does missing a particular question implicitly impugn a candidate's worthiness? I don't think there are necessarily clear or correct answers to these questions, but there's a lot riding on getting them all right on the first try. And finally, do you really want a third party deciding on your behalf that your candidate is unfit and ineligible for office? I get how in the best case scenario, that seems like a good thing, but it's also fundamentally undemocratic in a very deep, meaningful sense. Broadly speaking, my view is that we should do the opposite, and have as few barriers as possible between the electorate and the candidate. There's a lot I would change about our political administrative processes, but the fact that basically anyone can run isn't one of them. Politicians spend millions of dollars on their political campaigns. You think no one could afford to pay a guy $50 to bomb a civics test?